It's 6 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. Let's start with the headlines. President Park Geun-hye brings her Presidential Preparatory Committee for Unification together for a sixth meeting. Among other things, she emphasized the need for more constructive inter-Korean dialogue. Japan seems to be backtracking on promises it made at a recent summit with Korea, which has called for Tokyo to show a sincerity in resolving the wartime sex crime issue. Though the IMF predicts Korea's per capita GDP will be close to that of Japan by the year 2020, experts point out the need for industrial reforms to keep up with Tokyo and Beijing. We begin with President Park Geun-hye's Preparatory Committee for Unification, which held its sixth meeting earlier today. She stressed the importance of history in preparing for reunification and called on North Korea to return to dialogue. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
At the sixth meeting of our Unification Preparatory Committee on Thursday, President Park Geun-hye stressed that having a solid sense of history is essential for a reunified Korea.
통일이 되어도 우리의 정신은 큰 혼란을 겪게 되고 중심을 잡지 못하는, 그래서 결국 사상적으로 지배를 받게 되는 그런 기막힌 상황이 발생할 수도 있을 것입니다.
The comment comes as the government is preparing to retake control over history textbook publishing for secondary schools starting in 2017. The move has sparked controversy across the nation. The government says the move will eliminate what it calls left-leaning content in existing books, while some call it a challenge to democracy. President Park also revealed plans to increase government support for inter-Korean people-to-people exchanges in areas like culture, sports, and history. She said resolving Pyongyang's humanitarian issue and building infrastructure in the north are vital for bringing the two Koreas together.
남북 교류 협력 사무소를 설치하고 이를 통해서 보건 의료라든가 재난 안전, 지하 자원을 비롯해서 남북 모두에게 이익이 되는 분야로 협력을 확대해 나가기를 기대합니다.
And there was a message for North Korea. President Park urged Pyongyang to return to denuclearization talks, calling inter-Korean peace a precondition for reunification. To quote the president, she said true peace on the Korean peninsula can only be achieved when the North Korean nuclear issue is resolved. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Korea is calling on Tokyo to make a sincere effort to comply with the agreement reached at their bilateral summit on Monday related to Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. That's because since the summit, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been making a series of puzzling statements that seem to go against the spirit of the talks. For details, we turn to Song Ji-sun.
It's hard to say what Abe is really thinking about with regard to this sensitive issue, as his words have kept changing since he returned to Japan on Monday. Now, Seoul is urging Tokyo to show its sincerity in following through with the agreements they reached in their summit talks.
The wartime sexual slavery issue is not only the core issue for Korea-Japan relations, it's a matter of women's rights. There are only 47 survivors left, with an average age of 89, and no one can argue that the matter needs to be handled with some urgency. We hope Tokyo acts with sincerity, as agreed in the summit talks. That way, it will be beneficial for Japan's future.
The presidential office of Cheongwade has also called on Tokyo to comply with the agreements reached at the summit on Monday. Japanese media outlets have reported that Abe has backtracked on his pledge at the summit to try to resolve the issue at the earliest possible date through another round of high-level talks on the matter. He reportedly told Liberal Democratic Party leaders Hadakazu Tanigaki that the two countries have different perspectives on how to approach the issue, and reaching an agreement will only get harder if they set a deadline for its resolution. But Abe was later quoted as saying that Tokyo will also try to meet President Park's request to speed things up to make some progress this year, which marks the 50th anniversary of the two countries normalizing diplomatic relations. While Seoul's foreign ministry says the date for the next round of high-level talks hasn't been set yet, both Korean and Japanese media have reported the talks could be held as early as this month. If that happens, it will take place here in Seoul, as the last two were held in Tokyo. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
In domestic politics, Korea's rival parties lambasted one another once again today for the current parliamentary deadlock over the government's decision to retake control of history textbook publishing. The National Assembly has been paralyzed for 4 days, and it's hard to say when they'll get things moving again. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
The ruling Saenuri Party has sent a warning to the opposition bloc, which is currently boycotting parliamentary proceedings.
This is the last regular session of the 19th National Assembly, and there's a lot to do. It's all right for Chairman Moon Jae-in to hold press conferences, file lawsuits and hold rallies, but he should remember that the people are watching.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party said it is appalled by the remarks. At a party meeting on Thursday, party chair Moon Jae-in said President Park Geun-hye and the ruling bloc were the ones responsible for paralyzing parliamentary affairs and vowed a relentless fight on the textbook issue.
We will do our best to block the government's decision to reintroduce state-authored history textbooks. It's not a matter that can be resolved quickly, so our fight will continue for now.
Moon also promised to form coalitions with scholars and civic groups to address the issue and sought to reassure his fellow lawmakers that they are doing the right thing, saying the public is on the same track as a party. And yet, with the rival parties holding firm on their positions, it is unclear when or how parliamentary business will return to normal. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says Korea's per capita GDP will top $38,000 by next year and get very close to Japan's by the year 2020. However, experts say that Korea, flanked on either side by Japan and China, will have to reform its industrial structure to stay competitive. Park Se-young looks into the numbers.
In 5 years, Korea's GDP per capita will rise to nearly $37,000, drawing close to that of Japan's. According to the IMF's World Economic Outlook database, the nation's per capita GDP will reach $36,750 in 2020, a 31% rise from last year's $27,970. Japan's per capita GDP is forecast to see a 6% rise over the same period to slightly over $38,000. In 2005, the GDP per capita of Japan was nearly 2 times that of Korea's. Last year, Korea's per capita GDP adjusted to purchasing power parity came in at $35,400, close to Japan's $37,500. In 2018, Korea's numbers are forecast to overtake Japan's. The latest figures show Korea is narrowing the economic gap with Japan. Last year, Japan's GDP was $4.6 trillion, 3 times bigger than Korea's. According to the IMF's database, Korea's 2014 GDP of $1.4 trillion will rise to $1.9 trillion in 2020, reducing the gap to 2.4 times. In this year's IMD World Competitiveness Ranking, Korea climbed 1 notch to 25th, while Japan tumbled 6 spots to 27th. Meanwhile, the economic gap between China and Korea is expected to widen from just over 7 times last year to 9 times in 2020. Experts say Korea will have to stay competitive by reforming its industrial structure and developing highly profitable products to ensure it keeps pace with the Japanese and Chinese economies over the next 5 years. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
With Korea's domestic consumption picking up in recent months, the need for a rebound on the export front has become all the more important. But according to Shin Se-min, shoring up leading export industries might not be that easy.
Despite Korea's outbound shipments posting a decline of 10 straight months in October, falling nearly 16% on year, the country's chipmakers put up a good fight. Samsung Electronics, the country's top producer, is expected to rake in $11 billion in operating profit this year, while number 2, SK Hynix, earned in $880 million just in the third quarter. But industry watchers are worried that looming ahead is a downward spiral for global demand. Already, outbound shipments for chips in October fell 7% on year, down $5.5 billion.
The unit cost has more than halved as manufacturers increase their production for DRAM chips. On top of that, a slump in PC markets has dampened demand.
New smartphones rolling out aren't expected to prop up sagging demand either. Both Samsung and LG Electronics have been logging lower sales after each reaching their pinnacles in 2013 and 2014. And Korean automakers aren't doing much better. In the first 9 months of this year, Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors saw their overseas sales drop nearly 3.5% compared to the same period last year. Now, this as Korean automakers are increasingly being squeezed out of the U.S. and the Chinese market as their price competitiveness erodes away. Underperforming Eurozone economies, weaker local currencies in emerging markets, as well as cheaper oil and material prices are just a few other factors driving down automobile shipments. And experts say the outlook for Korea's exports will remain low for some time, with no immediate sign of global demand picking up.
Given the circumstances, local exporters will have to improve the quality of their products, whether it be with lighter chips or diversified cars with green technology, to outpace Chinese competitors.
Shifting away from slowing China and towards countries like India, while stepping up exports on consumer goods is also key, as Korea is set to face long-term headwinds on the export front. 신세민, Arirang News.
Turning to the latest on the Russian aircraft that crashed over Egypt, killing everyone on board. Days after Cairo dismissed the Islamic State militant group's claim of responsibility for that crash, British and U.S. officials now suggest it's a possibility. Lee-ji-won brings us the updates.
Britain's foreign secretary says more information has come to light, suggesting that the Russian plane that crashed after leaving the resort on Saturday may well have been brought down by an explosive device.
We have concluded that there is a significant possibility that that crash was caused by an explosive device on board the aircraft.
U.S. intelligence sources now also suggest the crash may have been caused by a bomb planted on the plane by the Islamic State group or an affiliate. The Associated Press reported Thursday that intercepted communications played a role in the tentative conclusion. The AP had previously reported U.S. satellite imagery had detected a flash just before the plane went down, which could indicate an explosion. Other reports say the fact that the crash debris and bodies were scattered over such a wide area indicates that the plane disintegrated in mid-air before crashing into the ground, lending weight to the theories that a bomb or engine trouble were to blame. Egyptian authorities have previously dismissed the possibility of terrorist involvement, and investigators are still trying to establish what caused the crash. Reuters cited an Egyptian source who said Thursday that an examination of the plane's 2 black box recorders and an ongoing forensic investigation will help determine the cause. The Islamic State group on Wednesday reiterated its claim of responsibility for the crash, prompting Britain to order suspension of all flights to and from the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, where the plane originated. Ireland has also directed its airline operators to avoid Egyptian airspace altogether. The Russian passenger plane went down on Saturday, just 23 minutes after it departed from Sharm el-Sheikh for St. Petersburg, killing all 224 people on board. Lee-ji-won, Arirang News.
Turning to a more lighter story now. Well, for almost a week, people have been camping out in front of 4 SPA stores in Korea for a chance to be the first to buy new fashions created as part of a collaboration with a high-end brand. Our Hwang Sung-hee was in the queue, and she brings us a glimpse of the fashion craze.
It's 5 a.m. in Myeongdong, one of Seoul's main shopping districts. The chilly weather has not stopped these people who have been in line for days in order to get a hold of their favorite designer items. Those at the very front of the line have been camping out for 6 days. The reason? This SPA store is one of roughly 250 shops in 61 countries where Balmain and H&M launched a collection on Thursday.
Actually, the whole idea is good because of active fashion is for everyone, and actually it has no barrier between like luxury.
Time is money, but not in this case, as the waiting has paid off, with these people getting hold of their favorite designers' items for a fraction of what they would usually have to pay.
This beaded dress required a lot of craftsmanship, which is why it's the most expensive item, sold at $480.
The manager says Korea's collaborations with high-end brands began 6 years ago, and Koreans are now showing great interest in the project. In fact, Korean buyers stood in some of the longest lines for the launch worldwide.
When I came here last year for the Alexander Wang collection, I went back home because I couldn't handle the waiting. But this time, I'm not leaving.
The 21-year-old student added he thought it would be a tough fight.
I was lucky. I got everything I wanted. I bought a rider jacket, biker jeans, and a hoodie.
What is it about the craze? Experts say it has a lot to do with the Korean public's obsession with high-end brands.
Buying items by luxury brands is an indicator of a person's social status in Korea, and the trend is intensifying as our society is becoming more and more insecure.
This insecurity, according to the professor, has been produced in part by Korea's experience of rapid industrial growth, followed by a rapid economic slowdown. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
It's time to wrap up this newscast. As always, thank you for watching.